Let me just say, if you own a Wii and you haven't played Little King's Story, you're definitely missing out on one of the best games that the console has to offer. Developed by Sing and published by Xseed, this game definitely has a good pedigree behind it. But is there enough content here to dust off your Wii and finally boot it up for the first time in ages? Okay, first the gameplay. This game plays an awful lot like Pikmin or something like Overlord actually, but with more upgrades and a kiddie presentation, and a pretty big overworld. You gather minions, take them around with you, and they do your bidding. If there's a log that needs to be cleared, if there's a hole that needs to be dug, or if there's an enemy that needs to be killed, your little guys will be doing all the work. Although the king himself can attack, it seems pretty useless to do so. Now that being said, let's go ahead and go over the negative points of the game. One of the problems is that enemies tend to pop out of these little holes in the ground that you send your guys to go dig out. The problem is whenever you send all of your guys to try and fight this enemy, the game perceives that you're trying to make them dig the hole more. So they sit there like idiots, digging the hole and getting hit by this enemy instead of attacking the immediate threat that's right in front of them. Another kind of drawback, I'm not sure if I'd call it a drawback, but it's something I guess worth mentioning. The story is charming, don't get me wrong, but ultimately it's of little consequence. But that kind of makes sense for a game like this. You wouldn't want to get bogged down in a whole lot of talking and script and text and narrative. Another problem is the game's presentation. Not to say that it's, functionally bad. It's just a little over childish. Another tiny drawback, I'm really fishing here because there's not many. There's this ping pong mini game that you can play in the castle. You're able to get various objects, unlocks, and there's different difficulty levels, which is all well and good, but to be honest, the overall game is kind of garbage. Other things that are kind of bad, the targeting can sometimes be difficult, the follow AI can be pretty stupid as well. There's no pause button, just hitting the plus button brings up a menu and the game keeps running. The only way to pause it is to really hit the home key. The limited appeal is kind of there mainly because, well, it's really kiddie. But probably the biggest drawback for me on this game is the difficulty. Despite its really kiddie presentation, this game is balls hard. And when you first start off, it's not that bad, but it seems to have a pretty big difficulty spike. I'm willing to just call it a difficulty wall. You hit it, and it hits you back. Some of the bosses are just downright relentless. Just cruel. But if you can make it past them, this game is definitely worth playing. Like I said before, the game has lots and lots of charm. Very cool, very watercolored paint kind of presentation. One of the great things that sets this game apart from Nintendo's own Pikmin is the fact that you can upgrade things. When you first start off, your kingdom is pretty small, very barren, very poor. But as you go throughout the world, you're able to collect treasures. Gold bars, random pieces of wood, whatever you can finally get your hands on, it's all worth something. And whenever you get back to your castle, you cash it all in for some money. Now what do you do with this money, you ask? You buy things, of course. You upgrade your castle, you build farms to train farmers, you build movie theaters, you build a church, you build all kinds of different things. You can build a multitude of buildings, but not necessarily all of them are useful. Like say the movie theater is neat, but ultimately it doesn't really do anything. The followers are another really cool part about this game. It's not just, simple run-of-the-mill followers. You have different job classes that do different things. The default is the careless citizen, or whatever he's called. They're worthless. They don't do much, but it's what you start the game with. And then you get farmers, which are able to dig some of the more difficult holes in the game. You also get classes that are good at fighting enemies like archers and such. Lumberjacks, miners, all different kinds of classes, and many of them are fairly unique. There's even a few hidden classes that are actually very difficult to obtain, but once you do, they're fairly fun to use. When you first start the game, you can only carry, I think it's 5 citizens or so, but once you start leveling up and progressing, you're able to carry more citizens and actually get more formations. That way you don't have to worry about them constantly getting stuck behind things and being able to go through narrow passages without falling off the edges. Another great thing about the followers is you actually somewhat start to connect with them. You're able to give them special items that'll up their stats, and you tend to remember their names, so you actually become quite familiar with them in a roundabout way. But that's enough about those boring old units. Let's get to the gameplay of the things. Like I said before, you run around collecting treasure and then trying to expand your kingdom by getting challenged by rival kingdoms. There are 7 rival kingdoms that you need to travel to and defeat the ruler in order to take over the kingdom. Although you don't really take over the kingdom, it just gives you a small patch of land outside of your own kingdom. You don't actually get to take their entire area. But the boss battles are nice and varied. There's never really a dull one. The sound in this game is actually pretty fitting. Nothing special, but the music is all classical music that's been kind of revamped for the game. It works. Another thing, I know it seems like a minor praise for the game, but it actually ends up making a big difference if you really pay attention to it. All enemies tend to telegraph their attacks by shooting out these little steam bubbles above their head right before they attack. That way you're able to call your guys back in time before they all get wiped out. And trust me, this game would be really annoying if the enemies didn't telegraph their attacks. Imagine having all of your guys attacking something, and one of the enemies start to move, but you can't really make out what they're doing. Well, if they didn't have the little steam bubbles to telegraph their attack, then suddenly all of your guys would just be dead. And that would be very annoying. Another great thing about the game is the varied mission types. I'm not gonna lie, the majority of them are go here, kill this, or go here, get this, but there are the specialty missions. For instance, there's one where you have to go fight a UFO, or there's another one where you have to go and, deal with a family of distraught people called the Hurricanes, I believe their name is. All in all, this game is awesome. I really, really enjoy it. Don't let the kitty presentation fool you. You should be able to find it for 25 bucks used, 30 bucks new. I always recommend you buy things new, because if you don't buy new, you're not supporting the developer, you're supporting the store. So if you own a Wii, make sure you at least try this game. Give it a rent. I'm sure most of you have GameFly. Just give it a shot, and I guarantee you won't be disappointed. And if you are, well,